Morning. So now we're up to Yudalid. Beis Yudalid. So in the two previous Asias, Yud Beis and Yud Gimel, the Rebbe Rashab explained two paths in Avodah. One path is serving Hashem through Simcha. It doesn't only mean Simcha, but in general, through feeling uplifted and love and joy and pleasure in Hashem. And that comes from meditating on the greatness of Hashem. For example, meditating on Yesh Me'ayin. One of the places where we see the greatness of Hashem, and the other is serving Hashem with a feeling of humility. When a person is humbled by Hashem's greatness, the more they're humble, the more they feel the desire and the craving and the yearning to be connected because they realize how far they are. So he's going to explain now in Yudalid that even people on this level, where he describes them here, these are people who actually really experience what you're supposed to experience in davening, a sort of a spiritual and godly feeling of joy or humility. Nevertheless, in a subtle way, it still could be generated by Yeshus, again in a very subtle way, and we have to be extremely cautious because the outcome could be, the result could be to do things which are the opposite of Ahavas Yisrael, Sinas Chinam, and the reason is because at the core there's Yeshus there. How could there be Yeshus when a person is experiencing joy in Hashem? How could there be Yeshus when a person is being humbled by Hashem? So he's going to show this. But again, let me just reiterate, this means in a subtle level, not in the way we know Yeshus, in a very pronounced way. And that's why it's actually difficult to recognize. Thank God we have a Rebbe, and thank God we have a Maimer, so we could see the honest truth and do things right. We know that begashmias, in warfare, there are two kinds of ways that the enemy fights. One way is an open way. They're out there in the field, they're wearing their uniform, they're shooting at the other country, and we know that this is the enemy, and we target them. There's another kind of tactic and sort of a way of fighting in the army, and that is when the soldier is not openly wearing the uniform of the enemy, but in fact gets dressed like as if he's one of us. And this is what a spy is. He acts like us, he speaks like us, he gets involved in things like us, he looks like us, but in reality, he's a spy, and he's trying to undermine us from inside. He's not armed with all the arms like the one who's shooting at us, but in a way, it's much more dangerous because you don't know that this is the enemy. So the Yetzer Hara also has two ways, the way that he attacks us in his strategy. One way where he comes more openly, and he says that don't do this mitzvah or do an avera, even though it may be very strong and a strong feeling to listen to him. But the good news is that you know very clearly, it's black and white, that this is against Torah. The other is when he comes in a camouflage way. Not only camouflage, it looks and appears to be Kedusha. And this is the famous Hayom Yom, which is found on the day of the 23rd of Sivan, where the Rebbe Rashab says, at a certain point, he was in Yechidus with his father, with the Rebbe Marash, and he told him this idea about the Yetzer Hara coming in a camouflaged way, and he said that was the first time I heard that there could be a Chassidish Yetzer Hara. Sounds like a contradiction of terms, but there could be a Chassidish Yetzer Hara, which means the Yetzer Hara dresses in the garbs of a Chassid, speaks in the language of a Chassid, makes it sound as if the motive are Chassidish motives, but in reality, it's the good old Yetzer Hara.
Is that the thief in the release. Is that like a
The thing from what?
thief in like a suitcase?
I didn't hear that, Marshall, no. So let's look inside now. Page 107, and there's the beginning of chapter 14. So if you're using the book, just look for chapter 14 or page 11. Page 11. Bine, shtei ofanim. In both above mentioned approaches of Avodah, it still may be blemished by yeshus and by coarseness at the core level in a subtle way. And now he explains how. The first approach, Avodah b'simcha. The Avodah is with simcha. When a person is serving Hashem with simcha, so they're happy, they feel uplifted, they feel on a high, that certainly could be underlying yeshus. Shu yesh mi she'oyev, like it says in Tanya, there's someone there that loves. Which means that when a person has love, it doesn't dismiss the feeling of self. On the contrary, love is based on self-love. Of course, I love myself, so I love certain things which gives me satisfaction, which gives me pleasure. So yes, I'm speaking about loving that person, I'm speaking about loving that thing, but in reality, at the end of the day, what is it all about? That is what makes me feel good and gives me pleasure. When there's an emotion of joy and excitement, these kind of feelings, the person is conscious of self. And the same is with love. Love is a feeling, there's a feeling of self. Page 108. That I want to be close to Hashem. Again, of course, the feeling, generally speaking, is I love Hashem and I want to be close to Hashem. But part of that feeling and what's mixed into that feeling is the sense of self and love for self and the awareness of self. And I want to satisfy myself by embracing Hashem, by loving Hashem. As explained in another place, how this is possible. So, let me see a few more lines, then I'll explain something. It is necessary to devise, so we need to find advice. We need to find some sort of a technique, a way. How could I make sure that my love for Hashem, my joy in Hashem is characterized by bittul? And in other words, the dominating feeling is going to be bittul to Hashem rather than the love of self. In fact, this was the Avodah of Aaron on a higher level. He was the Kohen Gadol. And his Avodah was, like it says in Chumash, B'halos HaNeiros, he had to light the menorah. And Chassidus explains the menorah had 7 branches. When it's 7 branches, what does that mean? 7 midas. And what he needed to do was lahamshel b'chinas chachma b'midas. He was there to pour the oil into the 7 branches of the menorah and to light it. Oil is chachma, and midas are emotion. Pouring the chachma on the emotion means chachma is bittul, and pouring it on the emotion means the emotions, even though they're emotions towards Hashem, but they should be permeated with bittul, not with yeshus. So on the surface, it seems to be difficult to understand. If I love Hashem, what could be wrong with that? Just shows us how deep Chassidus goes and how everything is examined like under a microscope, a Chassidish microscope. But there is a possibility that a person's love for Hashem could be more about self, to the extent that there could be practical ramifications as a result of that. And that is that I end up doing something sometimes because I love Hashem, but really I'm ending up doing something which goes against what Hashem really wants. And in my mind, I'm doing it because I love Hashem, but actually the only way that could be possible is because what's at the core is really self-love. Example, who can give me an example? How's that even possible?
I want someone to be quiet and sure when you can't hear the Torah, and maybe you're making them feel bad when you just want to hear the Torah.
Davening all day. Like
Okay.
instead of like taking care of your things, separate from davening, you feel like you feel connected to Hashem if you're like davening all day. What is
Not
that?
getting carried away in Gashmias, like saying it's for Hashem, but you're actually just like.
So all three examples are good examples. Basically, it means it's possible, being motivated supposedly by love for Hashem, but it's really, I could trample on something which is Hashem because I'm loving Hashem, but really I'm loving myself. I mean, this is a little story that's told. It's a mushal, but it brings out the point. The story is told about a fish that was in the water, and the fish is racing back and forth. And the other fish say, "What's the matter with you? Why are you so nervous?" He says, "What do you mean, why am I so nervous? The fishermen are going to come soon, and they're going to catch us, and that's the end." And as they're talking, the net falls over all these fish, and sure enough, they're in the net. They say, "I told you this is what's happening," and it's getting all panicky. Then they overhear the fishermen speaking, and they realizes these are not just ordinary fishermen. They were sent by the king to bring fish for the palace. And how they're talking amongst each other, the king loves fish. And then the fish says, "Oh, Baruch Hashem. Wow, this is good news. The kings love fish. So I'm safe now. They're probably going to come to the palace. They're going to build a small aquarium, nice water, and nice things. And now he's calm. They come to the palace. Instead of going into the palace, they go down to the basement. They go into a kitchen. What's going on here? They put him down on a what is it? You know, the kitchen, the counter. And then he sees that the cook is taking out a knife, and the fish starts screaming, the king doesn't love fish, he loves himself. But that's what people say. He loves chicken. What does he do? Because he loves chicken. He eats up the chicken. He loves fish, so he eats up the fish. There are people who love animals, and they take care of the animals. They protect them. They make sure no one. Oh, that I can understand. But the person who eats fish because they love fish, they really love themselves, not fish. So in the same way, you could be loving Hashem. You can be doing something that goes against Hashem. And you're saying it's because of love. How does that make sense? Because really, I'm loving myself. I'm enjoying this thing, and the same could be in a relationship with a husband and wife. A relationship that has to be based on love for the other person means that I give up what I want for myself for the other person. Not my love for the other person is going to give me satisfaction. If that's the case, then when there's a conflict of interests, that this makes the other person happy and me not so happy. This makes me happy and the other person not so happy. Which will I choose? So the person that at the core level loves himself more than the other person, he'll choose what they want for themselves. Even though they'll think on saying, because I love that person. But the true love is that a bittul. Bittul means it's not about me, it's about that person. And I'm ready to give up things that give me pleasure because to help that other person. So this is a very famous chapter in Tanya. And this chapter in Tanya is chapter 41. And it's the beginning of a new segment in Tanya. But the chapter 41 begins with the words that even though we learn all over in Tanya that love is the source of positive commandments, fear is the source of the negative commandments. But really, everything, even positive commandments, can be based on love alone. It has to be based more than anything else, like the foundation, over the foundation is fear of Hashem, which means the love has to be based on bittul. Otherwise, the love can lead a person to do things that can hurt other people, like you said, to do things which is against Hashem's will. He wants me to go out and do gashmizik things to change the world, and I'm busy with my own davening and learning. The love is about me enjoying my experience of loving Hashem, and it's not really for Hashem. So here too, there could be simcha and joy and excitement, but what's really the driving force behind it is yeshus. And then it's possible for such a person to daven with simcha, and at the end be very mean to someone and very cruel to someone and embarrass someone in public, even and do things which are sinas chinam. And in his mind, it's all because I love Hashem and this person did an avera, so he deserves to be treated that way. But really, it's yeshus. So he explains this a little bit, how the bittul could sort of direct the simcha and the joy and the love to be in the right direction. We knew that bittul mitzad or elyon, bittul comes as a result of being exposed to something higher than self. So that humbles me. The is bar la'el, the page 109, the kishmiz beina begedulas v'reimus v'aflos ein sof. When a person meditates on the greatness, the exaltedness, and how Hashem's nature is infinite beyond our imagination. When he thinks about it, the godly light shines in his soul. He feels, he senses godliness. He senses the infinity of godliness, the greatness of godliness. And this light which is shining, this causes him to feel bittul, true bittul. In order for this to be effective, I have to first prepare myself before the davening, then it'll have that effect. When a person prepares himself in davening and says to himself, I'm going to meditate on the greatness of Hashem, but he sort of directs himself and says to himself, I want to be focused and think about the greatness of Hashem, to sense the godliness in it, not just to be fascinated by the greatness of this concept or something. That's what I want to focus on, the greatness of Hashem. Then this will subconsciously direct my thoughts and direct my soul. The way I will react to these thoughts is that I'll be excited and I'll be enjoy from the greatness of Hashem, the godliness, and not anything else. So first there has to be a preparation. Page 110. In other words, the preparation is that I'm focused. I want to feel the godly light in its own right, not other things and other reasons for excitement. The excitement should be purely out of the godliness. Just like begashmias, let's say it's Shabbos, and someone serves food on the table Shabbos, and the food is just delicious, and people are licking their lips. It's so delicious. What is your pleasure? Is it a pleasure of Shabbos or a pleasure of food? So let me tell you, if you're eating maror and you say this is because of Pesach, then we can trust it, because you don't like maror and you can't stand maror, it's bitter. But the only reason I'm eating it is because this is what Hashem wants. So if I do feel any pleasure, I know the pleasure is not from the food, the pleasure is from the mitzvah. But if I'm eating something which is physically pleasurable, it's a little bit more difficult to say honestly that my pleasure is from the mitzvah rather than not from the food. So it's the eitzah, don't make the food so pleasurable. Put in some salt, no, chas v'shalom. It's a mitzvah to eat food on Shabbos. So you have to have food. So I guess it has to do with our focus, concentration. The mind affects the whole psyche, the way we operate, the way we function. So the person's, when he goes down to it, he should say to himself, I want to feel the pleasure because it's Shabbos, and Hashem wants us to be experiencing pleasure on Shabbos. So the same as with his bonus. When you think about the greatness of Hashem, how phenomenal it is, what Hashem created, Yeshmiyayin, and the joy and the pleasure, before I even start, I have to make that sort of achlata, and that'll direct my thought process, that'll be focused more on the greatness of Hashem and the pleasure of Hashem, rather than this fascinating, unbelievable, phenomenal thought process. So that's what he's saying, that then his joy, his ava, and everything will be miter simcha. That will be for the right reasons. Now, the truth of the matter is that all these things are very high levels, and we are nowhere near it, but everything that it says in Chassidus, which is a very high level, in some way we can apply it to ourselves in some sort of a miniature form, at a smaller scale, as much as possible, that a person, when he davens and thinks of the greatness of Hashem, that I want to recognize Hashem's greatness exclusively because of Hashem, not because of the pleasure that it gives me. Okay, so this part is clear, because when a person is uplifted, when a person is besimcha, in fact, we see sometimes people are very happy, and as a result of that, they can end up doing things that are destructive and not right. As the expression goes, that there's a thin wall, very thin wall, between simcha and frivolity. Frivolity is being wild. Simcha is something very deep and spiritual. But outwardly, they look the same, jumping up and down and being happy and singing. But because it's a feeling of, you feel uplifted and you feel excited, it's very possible it should go easily off track into another place. There's this more of a consciousness of self. So therefore, when it comes to that person, surely we can see how if it's not being controlled and if we're not working on it, it could end up being simcha, that's based and motivated and driven by yeshus. What about bittul? What about an avodah of humility? How could that be based on yeshus? If by its very definition, it's humility. That's the second half of this chapter. Ready?
Let me just recover from
The first half, okay.
Pick myself up off the floor.
Okay, second round. גם בעבודת לבחינת שפלוס הנזכרת לאל, even in the avodah that we spoke about before, which is humility, although, shebederech klal, generally speaking, we're talking about humility, it's bittul hayesh. The very word humility, and to say that I feel humbled, is by definition bittul. Kol makom evshali is gam b'zeh b'chinus yeshus. There could be a yeshus the bittul. How's that?
Wait.
That's all. No, chas v'shalom. I'll soon explain, because this is really, when you learn this, you say, forget it. So what am I even worried? These are people that reach such high levels. I'm not going to go. But I'll soon explain the main part of the mind that we could relate to, at the end of the day, is Maisa, is action, and we can all relate to that. The bottom line is he's going to teach us where my actions should be going and the way my actions should be. And that we can all do. Even when a person feels the bitterness and the humility, but it's still filled with feelings of self. There's kind v'efes mamish. It's not that it's real humility, that he really feels like a non-entity. It's all about Hashem. And he repeats this in Yiddish to make it more emphasized. The Zerbrochenkeit is nicht kein Amitis, es aber sich sein gar nicht beemes, verlieren sich legamri mekoil lekoil. It doesn't cause him to feel that he's truly nothing, losing himself. What does that mean? I'm not sure, but I'll tell you what it could mean, maybe. I guess when a person, and this is one of the reasons why we have to be very careful with feelings of bitterness or humbleness. And we know that we're always talking about the fact that we should focus on simcha, because when you go to the other area, you end up getting depressed, you get down. Because when you feel humble, when you feel I'm far from Hashem and all that, there's always two things that could be going on. One is positive, one is negative. The positive is that I'm distant from Hashem, and the purpose of thinking about it is because the distance breeds desire and craving and yearning. Like we said the other day, that this is what?
Thinking about what?
Bittul, right. When I realize how far I am from Hashem and distant from Hashem, what's the point in thinking about that? Because recognizing the distance, that breeds more yearning and craving for Hashem. This is the meaning of the words of David HaMelech. I think I said it last week, at least I remember going to say it. The famous niggin of Tzama Lecha Nafshi, Kama Lecha Bsari, Came B'Kodesh Chazei Sicha. That David HaMelech said how thirsty I was, and how thirsty and yearning and craving for you, Hashem, in the desert. I wish that when I'm B'Kodesh, when I'm in a good place, not in the desert, I should be yearning for you and craving for you just the same. In other words, Begashim is when a person is in a desert. Yes, we remember saying it, that if a person hasn't had water for a long time, but he's in the city, even though he's thirsty, that thirst is felt in a sort of measured way. When a person's in a desert and is thirsty, he has no idea when he's ever going to get to a place where he'll have his water. There's so much more intensity to the thirst because he's in a desert. There's no water around. So basically, when a person is far from Hashem, and in a desert spiritually, so his thirst for Hashem and his yearning and his craving is so much stronger. That's the point. Why is it that certain people, when they think about that, they get depressed? How does it lead to depression? Because they are focusing, or at least in their mind, realizing or not realizing, they're thinking not about Hashem, they're thinking about more, not about the Avodah, they're thinking about their image and their points. And am I a failure? Am I a success? It's about me. And they realize I'm a failure. I'm so far from Hashem. And therefore it leads to depression. The other person not think I'm a failure or I'm a success. What is my image like? Is it a good image or is it a bad image? Or where do I stand? Where's my record? All this is about me. No, the thought is about my avodas Hashem. And therefore they're just thinking thoughts that will generate stronger yearning, craving, desire for Hashem. So therefore, when a person feels humbled, there could be two aspects there. One is, I feel humbled and it's about total bittul. I feel bittul towards Hashem. Wow, I'm humbled by Hashem's greatness. It could also be a certain feeling of something me with me, like I'm lacking. Like I feel bad about the fact that I don't have enough in me to be closer. So that's what it means. The bittul is not complete and not 100% true. And therefore, obviously, the real purpose in this, in recognizing the distance from Hashem, doesn't really touch him in the depth of his soul. If the real truth, this is a story that I probably heard from you more than once, where this chassid came to the Alter Rebbe and said, Rebbe, what should I do that I feel my avodah is not be'emes? Remember that story? No, good. And then he said, and even the fact that I'm complaining now that I don't do my avodah be'emes, even that, my complaining, I'm really not complaining be'emes. I don't really mean it. And even the fact that I'm complaining that my complaint is not be'emes, even that is not be'emes. And he went on and on and on until he fainted. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said that, and that was be'emes. He was unconscious. What does it mean? It means that the chassid was looking constantly to see, take myself out of it. I'm not enough. Take myself out of it. Still not enough. He wanted it to be pure, exclusively godliness. So, again, we don't have to worry about these feelings. We're not in that place, but we have to worry about the outcome. And that's what we could talk about, which we'll soon see. The practical end of it. What does it lead to practically? We'll soon see. If the emes is not really touching him to the core, then he won't have that shiftless bittul gamri, the true bittul and the true humility. That's one reason. Another reason how it's possible to be humble and have the eshus. In fact, the humility or being humble is almost like based on the eshus. It's page 112. He actually feels good, and he feels a sense of joy that I have bittul towards Hashem. Wow, I have bittul. This is amazing. So when a person has that, again, he's thinking about his own image. I mean, they say this as a joke, that there was once a certain group of students that was standing and talking about their teacher. And one of them said, the teacher was in the other room, and they're talking among themselves. And one said, I think the greatest thing about our Rebbe is his depth of learning Torah. I don't think anyone could match his depth of understanding. The other one says, I don't think it's the depth, I think it's more the vastness of his knowledge. I don't think anybody has such vast knowledge like he does. And the third one said, I don't think it's about that. I think it's more about his midas. His character is so refined, so beautiful, so pure, nothing like it. They go on and on. Each one says something else. Then they hear a voice from inside that, and what about my humility? So a person can have humility and be humble, and now I add that to my resume. I have one more thing. I am humble. It's true that Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm the most humble person in the world. But that, we know, is explained in a different way, that to him, humility, the way it's always explained in Chassidus, that he felt that everything he has is from Hashem. But if a person feels a certain pleasure of being humble, that means the humility itself is part of something which adds to my yeshus. Even though this is not really so pronounced, it's not really thinking, wow, I am humble. This is something subtle in a subconscious place. But that means that the essential yeshus which he has is still there. And the fact that I feel humbled by Hashem didn't really take it away completely. It's an expression in Gemara, which means that this little thing could undermine the whole thing. As a result of this, because the feeling of humility and bitterness is really still has underlying that feeling of yeshus, and this doesn't really refine him the way it's supposed to. And it doesn't lead that on the practical level. Here now we're coming to what's the ramifications that practically is learning Torah, is davening, and mitzvahs are not the way they should be. This is the reason why. Now he's going to conclude, and I think this is the most amazing part of the whole Maimer. Here's a person that's an Oived Avaya, and when Rebbe Rashab says Oived Avaya, he means the real deal, like he just described there. They tell the Sikh of the Rebbe Rashab that he wants to ask somebody who obviously didn't study Chassidus, and he says, do you have love for Hashem? And the person answered, well, how could you not love Hashem? So the Rebbe Rashab later said, of course without a name, just the idea, he said, he asked a very good question, how could you not love Hashem? But from his answer, you can recognize that he has no clue what real love for Hashem is. People think that when you say, Hashem, you love Hashem, that's love for Hashem. It's not words, and it's not sounds, and it's not nuances. It's a feeling of love, a sensation in the heart, just like a person loves their spouse, their children. It's a real feeling. And there's depth and layers of depth of this feeling. So when the Rebbe Rashab says, Oived Havaya, he serves God, he's talking about somebody who really has feeling. We should be humbled by this person that he's describing here. And this very person that's being described, because it's not the way it should be. It doesn't have the complete bittul, but it has that underlying yeshus there. This is the reason why I can't tolerate his colleague. especially a friend that also has attained a certain standing and a certain level in divine service. Because if that person, if I recognize this person's qualities and that this person has a certain quality to them, a certain prominence to them, then the person is like me. If the person is like me, this detracts from my yeshus, makes me not so big anymore. If I'm the only one that has this quality, I'm really exceptional. I'm special. If someone else has the same quality, then what's so special about me? Even if they have it less than me, but already it detracts from my greatness. And that's why that's why he can't tolerate the other person. He can't join together with the other person, learn with him, discuss Avodah with him. And not only that, say he hates him. And he makes every effort to exaggerate and to publicly expose anything low about the other person, and how he's no good. What's going on in his mind? He's not thinking that this is Yeshus. He's thinking that I have to teach this person a real lesson. He's not davening properly. He's not learning properly. He's not doing this properly. And so he feels he's being motivated by pure reasons. But Rabbi Rashab is saying, you're making a mistake. This is being motivated by Yeshus. And therefore, it's totally treif. It's not good. And the reason why he does it, he doesn't want people to compare him to him, or he shouldn't even be superior to him, because that will take away from his yeshus. Even if it doesn't affect him, even if others don't compare him to him, or try to show that this person is superior to him, just because he has yeshus, he cannot tolerate the other person. Page 114. So he hates him, embarrasses him, and he can't speak to him peacefully, and he can't be friends with him. So this is one of the questions that came up in the beginning, that how come, we see this by people who serve Hashem, people who are teachers of Torah, sometimes mashpiyim, sometimes chassidim who daven. How could this be? And the answer is because they don't realize that this is really that underlying yeshus, because it's so subtle. So once you learn the mimer, how do things change? The awareness. Once they become aware that it's possible, then I'm checking myself out. And so this is what I meant when I said, how does it apply to us? I shouldn't do any of these things that it says here. No matter how holy it sounds and how purposeful it sounds and how loving it sounds, if I'm embarrassing someone, hurting someone, doing something that I can't be close to that person, I have to know that this is coming from Yeshus. If it could be Yeshus by this person, it's certainly Yeshus by me, then I'm not anywhere near the level of the person that he describes here. So therefore, we have to be extremely careful with anything that creates division between me and someone else. And if I can't help myself, at least I should recognize the emes, that it's not holy, 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 it's Yeshus. And that also helps.
So a person who's on a very, 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 very high level, they should be able to do what you just said, but if they have a harder time doing it than someone who knows how bad they really are. So then they just, okay, I'm just gonna do it right anyway, even though I know that I'm not feeling my feelings. And I'm not thinking.
You're saying they have a harder time than a simple person would have.
Yeah, I think so.
You're right. It's true. It's true.
Because for me, it's not subconscious, it's conscious.
Exactly.
I know exactly.
That where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. Right. But even we, in other areas, we feel maybe that I'm doing this for the right reasons. And that's why I think this should be the general rule.
Right.
Anything that has to do with division, anything that has to do with hurting someone, physically, emotionally, in any way possible, no matter how I feel that I'm being motivated by the right reason, it should be extremely, and that's why the Rebbe said, when he spoke about Asay L'Chara, the Rebbe said, how many things would never have happened had people consulted the mashpia before they went to do it. Because when you speak to another person, to that person, it's very clear what your motivation is, and they'll tell you to stay away. And I think I said this many times, and the Rebbe once said this, that when you have a mashpia, sometimes you don't even have to ask him mashpia. As soon as you think, I'm going to ask my mashpia, you stop and say to yourself, I know what they're going to say. As soon as we look through their eyes, I already see through their eyes that what I'm doing is not coming from the right place. Okay.
Isn't that the whole reason why, the Rebbe Rashab started? They don't say to ourselves, which was good.
Yeah, now these are people that work on their midos, but that could also be with yeshus. Yeah, I mean, basically that's the Rebbe Rashab saw that it's a time that is a weakness in Avodas HaTefillah and davening, which is on self-refinement. So this is the whole purpose of the Maimon, to give us a deeper understanding of what real self-refinement is. It's all about this.
Basically, if you're not having a good time, you're probably doing that.
No. You can allow yourself to have a good time as long as you don't take away someone else's good time. And you're okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Okay.
I would like to know what's the difference between this and Musar. This sounds like, so.
There's no way you'll find anything near this in Musa.
What's
Because Musa doesn't speak about Yeshus and Bittul. The definition of what out there in the world between Gaiva and humility is very pronounced, being arrogant, being boasting. But these are feelings that are very subtle. They're only for the Chassidus to understand what Bittul, true Bittul means. Bittul doesn't mean being arrogant and boasting. Bittul means feeling self. That no place else is to recognize that there's a problem with that.
That wouldn't be in that.
I saw a sefer, this is not an exaggeration, and he writes how important it is not just to learn, but to write down your own insights. And these are his words in Hebrew. He gives a few reasons why it's so good to write your own insights. So when you write down your own insights, atam margish k'mo yesh, you feel like really something. So in other circles, on the contrary, that's a motivation to do things. You're something, you're someone. It's not a negative thing. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you're saying that who wrote that statement?
Not
No.
because of that, obviously.
Oh.